I want to just share a cool video that we asked a donor to produce after they wrote a neat letter to Luis and Pat Palau about 18 months ago. And so it's sort of a what could be kind of thing. So it'll just sort of set the tone for us to think about this work with major donors. Let's take a look at the video. I'm going to make it go.
Pat, it's your good friends, Peter and Gail.
Luis and Pat, a couple of years ago, Gail and I were sitting down to review our estate plan, as you're supposed to do every 5 or 6 years, as everybody knows. And when we were doing it, we saw we had a bunch of different bequests in there, including one to your organization.
And we thought, why should they wait so long to receive that?
Yeah, I'm 72, Gail's, or 73, Gail's 72. Heck, we might last another 20 years, only God knows. But we thought some of these organizations, like yours, could probably use the funds now. Why wait?
And we were really inspired as we thought about how your boys, especially Kevin, has been running the organization and Andrew speaking, how it's time for your boys to be able to have some funds to plan ahead.
So we said, let's take out the bequest from our will and let's give the money now over the next 5 years. We can handle that. And that way we get the joy of watching you use it. You get the joy, and the rest of the team does, of having funds to use in your transition process.
Because in the present, we always can see what the needs are, or often can, but who knows in the future? And I'm sure you'll have needs as the Luis Palau Association, but we won't see that. So what joy it has given us to be able to say, use our funds to God's glory.
So Luis, the bad news is we've cut you out of the will. The good news is, as you know, starting last year and continuing for this year and 3 more, you're receiving the same dollars right now to be able to use for your transition purposes.
And one of our favorite verses that has meant a lot to me this year especially is from 2 Corinthians 9, verses 7 through 9. And it's, you must each make up your own mind as to how much you should give. Don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure. And we certainly haven't with this gift. For God loves the person who gives cheerfully, and God will generously provide all you need. And we have great joy that we can give to you this way.
We really do, and God's provided so generously for us. And we love you both. We love your organization. We love what you and the team are doing. Bless you as you continue to be about His work.
Amen. Hi, Luis and Pat. It's your good.
Really, I mean, to receive something like that and to have people that understand biblical generosity in that way, and they're preaching at the end of that. But that relationship probably goes back 40 years. And one of the things I just want to kind of like give you a thing to kind of orient your thinking about this work with major donors is it takes time. And you guys are evangelists. Patience is not your first strength, okay? You want to see things happen now. And Luis has that in him too. I've been on visits with him, and if it didn't go pretty smooth right out of the gate, he was like, okay, move on. This is why sometimes you need someone else on your team to kind of help mitigate some of those things. But I just kind of thought about one of the big things about Luis's success and our ministry's success with major donors. It's just like investing in relationships for the long haul. And Luis started raising money because he came to the United States and went to Latin America as a missionary in 1962. So that was 56 years ago. I got hired to work with the Palau Association as the first kind of like person that had real fundraising training in 1994 when Luis was 59. So I'm just kind of giving you a little bit of perspective about, it takes time. And the Palau team had different people that they put in the development role. And some of them did some good stuff. But sometimes it takes a while to find the right people to build into your team as well. So I just want to give you this idea that this takes time and investment. And this couple that you got acquainted with here, they probably knew for 30 to 40 years. They took vacations together to, overseas, did some crazy stuff like that. Pat and the wife shared a common interest in a missionary over in Asia, and they traveled to this missionary together. So it takes investment in relationship for the long haul. But I'm going to walk through basically 6 questions today. You've got an outline there. Don't freak out if I don't go deep on every single point, because I'm going to try to be done at in about 40 minutes with the content, and then allow time for us to interact around some questions as well. But why invest in major donors? It can bear a lot of fruit. We've seen God use major donors to really advance our ministry. One illustration of that was we had a festival in New York City in the summer of 2015. That is a very expensive city to do ministry, to try to lift up Jesus Christ for all of New York to hear God's voice. That is a big challenge. We gathered a bunch of friends that had the ability to give in a consequential way to the ministry in New York City, and we kind of put out this vision, and we had a $5 million budget that we put in front of these people, and they heard that. And some of them are very big time, like CEO types, and they said, that's not enough money. And we said, well, that's good to hear you guys say that, but we can't invent money. They gave funds to help lift the vision beyond what even our eyes and sights were. That can happen if you get the right people involved. So why invest in major donors? Because they can make big things happen. The other thing is that this is how the kingdom is supposed to work. The kingdom flourishes when people invest in a consequential way in your ministry. God has blessed people with the ability to operate in business and to make money. And they want to make an eternal difference. And so when we are extending an opportunity for someone to make a gift of any size, but in particular a major gift to our ministry, that is not an adversarial transaction. We're simply providing a conduit for them to accomplish what God has put in their heart to do. And when someone gives a major gift to your ministry, who wins? Okay, the kingdom wins, but let's get more kind of down. Who else, what pieces of this win? Okay, the donor wins, the kingdom wins, the person that didn't know Jesus, that heard the good news, that moved from darkness to life, they certainly win. Your organization wins because it now has the financial resource to do what it's been called to do. When we reach out and ask people to invest in consequential ways in our ministry, everybody wins. That is not a negative experience or transaction. Now, I wish I could say that every time we ask somebody to give consequentially, they would invest in our ministry. That's not obviously the case. God puts different causes even within the kingdom on people's hearts. People at different places in their understanding of biblical generosity, or maybe it's bad timing, whatever. But inviting people to invest in our ministry is just a way to unlock blessing and for the kingdom to flourish. So those are some reasons why. And I got another, and this is, can anybody read this? I realized after I was in this room yesterday, it's like, no, nobody's going to be able to read this. But this is a live actual data report from the Luis Palau Association for 2017. Okay? And so this is the range of annual giving, total number of donors, and the total amount given. And so this shows you how Palau is so heavily funded by major gifts. And so you'll see we had 254 different families or individuals give a gift of $10,000 or more to our ministry in 2017. And that was just over $10 million in total revenue. The total funding for LPA was $12,349,000. So these 254 people gave 81% of all of our funding. And if you add 5,000 to 9,999, that would be another 162 people, another 4.5% of our total donors, about $900,000. So about 11 million came from 400 people. Again, this is not like going to be everybody's ministry model, but I'm just saying like that's the blessing that we've seen at the Luis Palau Association, but this might freak some of you out. Did you look at the bottom of how many actual donors we have at Palau? 3,574 donors. It's not very many, is it? You know, when you see Luis up there preaching, to these thousands of people, there's a lot of expectation. Well, all these people must fund your ministry. No, not really. And we could do a better job of enlisting the mass donors in what we do. But I put that up there to just give you an idea of like what could be, okay? And then we talked about what happened, in New York City, and that was summer of 2015, Central Park, and Luis on stage with a guy named Matt Redman, a very gifted worship leader that came to Christ. Matt came to Christ through Luis's ministry in QPR Stadium in London in 1984. So that was kind of beautiful for them to minister together like that. So why invest in major gift fundraising? Because it can fuel your ministry in a major way, and the kingdom flourishes when we give major donors an opportunity to invest. Who? I already described it, or you kind of saw it represented on that chart, but we consider a major donor to be someone who has the ability to give $5,000 or more to our ministry. And we kind of subdivide that out a little bit more by saying people that have given $10,000 are people where we really try to go deep in relationship, and we'll try to visit with those people multiple times during the course of the year. Major donors have reasons why they give. It is very complex. Some give because they're blessed and they want to give back. So it feels good. They want to be a part of a group. Campus Crusade for Christ, where I got my start in fundraising in the early 80s, had a program that Dr. Bill Bright initiated. He felt it was from the Lord. He said, I'm going to raise $1 billion for evangelism, and we're going to do it by asking 1,000 people to each give $1 million to the ministry. And they came up with this name, History's Handful. That is one of the best names of a donor group I've ever thought of, because you talk about this handful of people that are going to make history. And when I left, which was in the mid-'80s, some would say, oh, wow, that was a colossal failure because they only had like $270 million that they raised through that. They didn't get to the billion. I think they were pretty happy with the $270 million that they had committed at that point. But Donors sometimes want to be a meaningful part of a group. And so we have something at Palau we call the President's Council that gives them a place to affiliate. And sometimes we'll do donor events where it's limited to some, key people that are kind of on the inside of launching initiatives, and that's something that they are sometimes drawn to. They want to have a meaningful impact, they want to help people, they want to be needed, they want to be affirmed. I think many times in terms of funding for evangelists, they see you as a godly, committed servant of God, and they want to come alongside you to see your vision fulfilled. That's another powerful reason why people give, but it's complicated. It's rarely just one thing, and it can be different things for different people. So help kind of studying that and understanding that is important. They also make assumptions about the relationship when they give, and they have expectations. And one of the challenges for us in ministry is to try to figure out what are those expectations and then to meet them and to exceed them. The sad part is you usually don't figure it out until you have violated their expectation. And then you find out, and sometimes it's too late. I mean, we had a donor to Palau who came to a very kind of exclusive gathering we had of major donors, and he had invested in a local festival, and we were in a real season of big time growth and taking on a big vision at that point, and we were actually in that same mode of kind of praying that God might raise up some people that would give $1 million. And there were some people at this gathering that had done it, and so they went to their friend, the others that were there, and asked, hey, we've done this, we'd like to ask you to consider it. And this guy did it, this guy and his wife. And got to the end of it, it was like over 3 years, and at the end of the 3 years, we realized we had not communicated well with this person. We had not thanked him well enough. We had not shown him the achievement of what his gifts were, and we have never gotten another penny from that individual. That's a bad time to understand that we haven't met the expectations of donors. I think once you have relationship, you can kind of ask them about that. I had dinner here last night with some Luis Palau Association members of our President's Council. And it was over at Maggiano's, and we were out on the patio there. And I just said to him, hey, how do you feel about how we as a ministry communicate with you? Have you ever asked your donors that? They'll tell you. And in this case, it was almost all good. And I think donors are reluctant to tell you bad things many times. The sad thing is what they'll do is they'll just walk away. And so we have to like get into their lives to understand what they want. And then, so they expect integrity from the ministry. They expect it to be managed well. They expect you as a staff to care for them, to thank them. They expect projects to be soundly based, to be done well. They like to see competence, though not everything that we do has to go right. It's okay to share the warts with donors. So that's some of the who we're reaching out to. What we do, it's all about relationships. And I'll say this, I almost say this every time I get asked to speak about fundraising. People give to people, justified by the cause. This is about relationships with people. Real friendships, real partnerships. I am blessed that in the next 3 weeks, I've been invited to 2 LPA donors' 60th birthday parties. I'm 57, almost 58, so these are guys that are sort of like in my peer, but why, I'm a ministry fundraiser. Why are they inviting me to their 60th birthday party? because I'm a friend of theirs. I'm a real friend of theirs. Okay? That's what we ought to be with these people that support our ministries. Real relationships, real friendships that we invest in. Immersion, exposing people to our ministry. We have a lot of festivals in the next 90 days at LPA. We're inviting people to come see our work in Eugene, Oregon. We're having a one-day festival there at the end of July. We got a block of rooms there with a decent rate, and they'll come, pay their own way, attend the festival, and then we'll have a brunch with them the morning after the festival. We'll train them to be counselors. We have a little hospitality area that's actually at the festival, and those people we'll put them to work counseling. One of the things that's interesting about our festivals is sometimes they'll have like this big fence thing right here because they don't want people crashing onto the stage, and there's a little gap in there. And when Luis or Andrew gives an invitation, there's usually a lot of hands that go up right here, and there's not many counselors. So we'll bring our partners right in this little section right here, and they'll counsel people right across the front. And there's also nothing like being able to look out at the faces when an invitation is given and people raise their hands. That's powerful. You do not forget that. So to try to give them that sort of opportunity. And we remember birthdays and important things in the lives of our people. You got to study your people, and you need to have a commitment to do that sort of thing. Inspiration. We need to be the good news people when we're executing our ministry, but we need to be the good news people when we get to spend time with people that can fund our ministries. They get a lot of bad news. These people's lives are, challenged many times. They have a lot going on. They have business challenges, relationship challenges and stuff. And when we come in and have an opportunity, I want to talk about how God's moving, how God's working in people's lives. So I challenge you to be the good news people, to just, Proverbs talks about refreshing people from afar, okay? You be that person that goes and brings refreshment to people. We just had a neat opportunity 2 weekends ago to do a small campaign in England. And there was a couple in this small town that met Christ later in life. And they took it upon themselves to just organize the churches. There's about a half dozen churches in this town. And they said, we went through all this chunk of our life, and no one told us about Jesus. We're going to tell people about Jesus. And they got these people together, and we had about 2,000 people that came out and heard the good news of Jesus, which in England is a hallelujah. God's moving, And that woman who had the faith to do it, her father gave his life to Jesus. Amen. He was a hostage negotiator, a hard-boiled, military guy, and he gave his life to the Lord. That's a good story to share with donors when you get together with them. I can't emphasize this next point enough. Ask. People give because they are asked. And this is sometimes like where it kind of knees get a little shaky sometimes, when we want to ask people to invest in our ministry. They are ready to ask. Don't let your poverty shape your challenge to people to invest in your ministry. And people give when they're asked. People give more when they're asked. It's the right person doing the ask. Somebody that's got real relationship. It's the right project. It's the right timing. It's the right amount. But we need to ask our people to invest in our ministry. I can almost guarantee you are not asking your people enough. to invest in your ministry. Appreciation. It needs to be meaningful. The old Christmas song, though it's been said many times, many ways, Merry Christmas, I say the same thing about thanking people. This is something that we did, and I had that picture on the screen earlier. This might take a sec to get this thing off of it. But, one thing that we do when we go back into our festival cities after it's over is we say thank you to all the people that the Lord raised up in that community to give, to lift up Jesus there. And so this happened to be that same picture. It's got this plastic on it, I guess, to protect it, which I always leave on because these things get kicked around when they're inside a suitcase and you're traveling from town to town. So I usually would peel this off before I present it, but it's kind of cool. It's just a plexiglass picture signed by Luis with the date, and it's real hard and durable plastic, and we'll have a little stand if you want to just sort of pass that around. This is one that we did. If you don't want to put it in acrylic, this is one that we did for this was from Sacramento. And so it's sort of a collage. You can pass that around if you want and send that around. Here's another one of these if someone wants to be bold and peel the cover off. Whoops. Sound didn't like that over there. Okay. So that's one tangible way you can express appreciation, and I like to give things that are meaningful, that remind people about the ministry, that in this case, if they put that picture up, I've had people tell me, like when people come to my office, they just go right for this thing. Well, how cool is that from our standpoint, right? I mean, they're now talking about their involvement in this, what it meant to them, why they got involved with it. It puts our name in front of these people. So if you can find meaningful things like that, that's a double win. And sometimes you can create those sorts of things. I heard a great story from one of our Next Generation Alliance partners the other day, who has a lot of his support comes from his hometown. And so his wife likes to bake. And so she baked like 5 pies. And they took these pies to the home of these donors that funded their ministry. And they did it together as a husband and wife. It was something that they made. That's pretty meaningful. That kind of stuff doesn't happen. And it just added depth to the relationship. So you don't have to have an acrylic photo. You can make a pie, okay? Things that people would appreciate. I mean, think about it. And then we've got to activate people in our ministry, and we have to demonstrate what their gifts accomplished. And so, stories win, in that work. Much stronger than stats. Those stats are also important, but stories really carry the day. We do a lot of post-event creation of publications that have mostly pictures, but then some captions and some stories of what God did. So try to be very good at expressing appreciation to people, and try to be very good at demonstrating how their gift made a difference, how it bore fruit. How to do it? These are 4 objectives that we try to do when we're engaging major donors. Get into their life, discover their dream, show them your vehicles, invite them to give now. What that means is God's put visions and dreams in the hearts of people. So we need to kind of understand how God's created them. What's their DNA? What makes their heart beat? And then kind of build that out. And then when there's overlap, and there frequently is overlap, how does that align with our ministry? How could we help them discover their dream of really making a difference in reaching young people for Jesus? How can the Luis Palau Association help discover their dream to make a difference in their hometown or a country that they care a lot about? Those are some things we try to do. And we actually try to go visit people that are in that $10,000 plus category. I'm glad you're sitting 4 times a year. Yeah. That's hard, right? 4 times a year. And these are not all visits kind of fit this pattern, but I'm going to give you a little pattern of what a 4-visit sequence could look like with a major donor. The first visit is just kind of getting acquainted, okay? And that could, if it's someone that you've known for years, it could just be catching up on life. What's going on? How are the kids? You're always going to talk some about ministry because that's who you are. That's what you're in. It just comes out naturally. So first visit is kind of get acquainted. Second would be a vision visit, where you're beginning to describe a ministry activity or theme within your organization that you're very excited about, that you think would be something that they could get excited about. And you're kind of establishing their interest in that, and you're kind of testing the waters a little bit. And what I will sometimes do, I have a guy I'm thinking about in Kansas City who's a sleep doctor. You hear about these sleep doctors. It's on the radio a lot, okay? Sleep doctors. And he grew up in Latin America. His parents were missionaries. So first visit was like, how's it going? This guy he has a Traeger grill. I have a Traeger grill. You know, we talk about grilling things and family and stuff like that. Then when I was there 2 or 3 months ago, I talked about Bogota. We're having a festival in Bogota this August. And I gave him some papers we had that kind of described the strategy. And I said, you know, I'm going to be coming back here probably in July. Well, wait a minute. So that means I had to have planned out like when I'm going to be going back before I'm even going on this visit. Yeah, that's what we try to do. It's got to be like, if you don't, most of you, I know I'm looking around at a lot of faces, you are the ministry, and so you're trying to figure out, how am I going to do this? I mean, I know it's hard, but you've got to budget some time to spend time with these major donors. So I'm going to be back in July, and I'd love to talk to you specifically about you participating in this project. And it was really, I haven't done the ask visit, but the third visit would be ask. Okay? Friendly visit, vision, ask, and then pray that they give, okay? Hopefully they did. And then the final visit would be report. Report back to them on the fruitfulness of what happened in Bogota. The funnest ones, if it went well, are report, and some of the most difficult ones are the report if it didn't go well, okay? We've had both, so it happens. But there's a sequence. So 4 visits a year, face-to-face, with these people that could give $10,000 or more to your ministry, and that is sort of an interesting general sequence. Doesn't always work that way. Sometimes maybe the thing that you brought that was going to be the vision visit, you started to present it and you realize, oh wow, they're not into that at all. What they're really into is this, or this is a really bad time for them right now. Something happened. The business went sideways, or a medical thing, or whatever. but the perfect scenario, that would be a grid you could think about. The telephone. My wife and I used to work for Campus Crusade for Christ, now known as Cru. Anybody heard of Campus Crusade for Christ? Okay. Missionary support raising. So we support probably about 8 families like monthly with Crusade. And then because we work there, we have all these other friends that are on staff with Campus Crusade. So at the end of the year, I bet you we get about 20 prayer letters from Campus Crusade staff, and all of them are sharing, and inviting you to make a year-end gift and stuff. This happened, it happens every year, but a couple of years ago, one guy called me, Mike Fox, who works for Athletes in Action and was going on some kind of like an Olympic, chaplain outreach thing, and he needed some money. Who do you think got 100% of my year-end Campus Crusade gift that year? Mike Fox. He called me. And so this concept that we're going to email our way to like major donor success, because I got this really cool website and email system that we've put together. I wish I could say that's going to work and we can just kind of sit back and watch the dollars roll in. But you got to get face-to-face, or next best thing is telephone. And, Luis, he was sick in December. Like that's when this whole thing was going down. He and I were in the office making phone calls, even in the midst of, he wasn't breathing too good. He's in the office phoning major donors in December. So it's hard work. In terms of the message, big vision is good. Okay? Has to be real. Donors have to see that you and your organization have the ability to actually execute on the vision. We had a big push about 14 years ago, maybe it was 12. And we took kind of what we do as a ministry and we just sort of said, okay, if we could kind of amplify it a little bit and kind of do the trajectory over 10 years, what would that look like? And it became a really big impact. And we were having a festival in Washington, D.C. back, I think in 2006 was when this was happening. And we brought that vision to some people. We brought a bunch of people to D.C. A lot of people wanted to come, which was exciting. And we took a small group of them and just had a little prayer time and a little presentation of this vision in a hotel room. And a guy who was in that meeting, and these were hand-picked people. We knew they had, like high ability to invest. And a guy came up to me after that, and he said, "Man, I could give $1 million to that if you could find, maybe 4 or 5 other guys that would do that." It kind of like probably one of the most crazy things in my fundraising career, because that's a lot of money. And this guy told me that, and I saw this other guy walking down the hall that I knew had the ability to do that, and I followed him down the hall, and I said, "Hey, guess what this guy just said?" And he said, "Okay, give us an overnight to pray about it." But he stepped up. We didn't even ask in this thing. It was sort of like, if God's put it on your heart to do something catalytic, let us know. There was another guy there that was a real kind of a people person activist type. We told him he was in. He went to a family that was there that has a family foundation and said, "Hey, we need to get to $5 million on this thing. You guys need to commit $1 million. And they said, "Well, we have to have a meeting, to kind of decide these things and stuff." He said, "No, you don't. You're all right here at the table. Just decide right now." And they kind of said, "Yeah, we'll do it." And, this was happening like I'm getting ready to present a bigger than the thing to the whole conference. And the first guy and this instigator guy were kind of leaning on the back wall of the banquet room, and the instigator guy turns to the other guy and says, if you and I both just go up 50%, we'll have the 5 million. And the guy said, okay. So we had $5 million to bring as a challenge then to these people. And God raised up another 5 people to match those original 5 people, probably within a year. But the whole thing comes back to that first guy. And I've talked to him about it many times, and he said what it was that vision. It was that vision. So sometimes our fundraising plans fail because there's not enough vision. We do a lot of events at Palau. Again, very hard to read, but this is like literally a schedule of like the major donor things that we're doing at Palau. And not everybody's invited to all these things, and this is not something that we normally publish, but we do President's Council weekends, so we have one in February, we have one in September, and we have one in October. We're taking people pheasant hunting. Steve. That's a very cool way to spend time with people, and when you do something like that, they'll never forget it. I'll always be able to go visit the people that we took pheasant hunting. We don't do a lot of asking at that weekend. It's just sort of relationship building. We do some major donor gatherings and some exclusive spots. And there's the thing I was mentioning in Eugene. And we have an annual fundraiser in Portland, like just a dinner. But we invite our major donors to that as well. So those are just that's all stuff that we're doing. So how do you get to, $10 million a year? You have to do a lot of activity to do that. I think I'm losing my mic here a little bit. You got to go where you have densities of donors. These colored areas are different. We have people whose full-time job is to visit face-to-face with these people that give $10,000 or more a year. We have one in Orlando, we have one in the Twin Cities, and then we have several that base out of, we have one in SoCal, and we have 3 that base out of Portland. I'm one of them. And so these are the weird territories that we work, but we go where there are major donors. Major donor concentration, if you were just gonna do it on a map, probably number 1 place would be Florida and Texas, Southern California, Arizona, Illinois for sure. Those are places that just as a rule, but generally you're going to have relationships where you have ministry. We're really strong in Portland, Oregon. That's not a strong evangelical spot. So go where the donors are. You can tie it to your ministry schedule. Luis, a few years ago, got invited to a church here in Chicago. He spoke on Sunday morning. They have a Spanish congregation, so he did a Spanish evangelistic outreach on Saturday night. So he took the church because he wanted to go do ministry. But we had a major donor gathering in a home Friday night. On Saturday morning, we met with area pastors who were thinking about a Luis Palau campaign. He reached hundreds of people for Christ at the Spanish ministry. On Sunday morning, we had a booth there, and we got something like 300 or 400 names of people that we could begin to build relationships with. Luis preached in the church. They took an offering for an upcoming Palau ministry, and I think they gave $20,000 to LPA, and we went home. That's a pretty good use of 48 to 60 hours of your time. And so when you get invited to go places, maybe there are things that you can build around your schedule. And when we do travel, we try to get anchor appointments. So we're looking at our best people, and we're going to start with appointments with them first and then build it from there. And then when? Do it now. All right. Didn't quite make my 10 after number, but we've got some time for some questions here. Yes, sir. How do you determine how much to ask someone? Wow, good question. One thing would be, have they given previously? You know, that'll give you a little bit of an indication, though that's not always indicative. That's a tricky deal sometimes. I mean, we can, there's certain things you can know about people just based on, you know, what their position is, like career, like what career are they in? You know a little bit about their wealth, maybe about where they live. Sometimes there are groups, not that frequently Christian groups, but sometimes Christian groups or universities will publish an honor roll, you know, and it'll say these are the, you know, Sapphire Society members and they gave $25,000 or more. So you can see what other public gifts they may have given. That could shed some light. Sometimes if they're a part of a foundation, a private foundation, all those financial returns are public domain. GuideStar.org is a good website to go to if you know of the name of a foundation. You can get the Form 990 and study the size of their assets and who they've given to previously. Sometimes, like, their friends might know what they've done. And another thing that I like to use many times is I'll break down a project into kind of a table of gifts. And so there might be, you know, like one lead gift at, say, $100,000 and a couple gifts at 50 and 25, and then maybe, you know, 10, 15, 10, 5, and then lower amounts. And sometimes by using a gift table, you can say, hey, we were hoping you might be able to consider a gift in this leadership level. And you're pointing, you know, you don't have to say the word. You don't have to say, I really want 25,000, but if the level is 25, 50, and 100, and you point to that, you've just asked them to consider a gift of 25,000. That's kind of a nice way to do it without feeling like a gotcha. The vast majority of the resources that we receive are from people who we know who they are, and that's good because we can affirm, we can thank, we can express appreciation, we can show the achievement and build a relationship that lasts for 40 years so that people, when you've got that tenure of relationship, are putting you in their estate or even taking it out of their estate and giving you gifts now. Thanks very much.